Hey y'all, it's Matt. First off, thank you for letting me take a break. I made videos all the way up till the end of the year last year, and I really needed it. Second, I do still have that Stadia video coming. A lot has happened this week, as you well know, and it just felt really stupid to make another video about cloud gaming. As I always say, I talk about tech and gaming and the policy and the culture around those things, and today you're gonna get policy and culture, Matt, so I hope you're okay with that. Two things you won't be getting today: ads. This video is not monetized. It would probably get demonetized anyway. I want to talk about the things that I want to talk about, and I don't want to worry about YouTube not letting me. And the second is any of those silly YouTuber calls to action. This is just not the video for that. I'll start by saying that what happened in the Capitol, just a few miles from where I'm sitting right now, isn't surprising to me. We've watched these people spin themselves into a violent frenzy in worship of a demagogue in the open for years. Yes, it's happened in the dark corners of the internet, but it's also happened in places like Facebook and Twitter and in our homes. It's happened outside polling places and on the streets of American towns. I grew up with people who used violent rhetoric to talk about the people that they disagreed with. And back then, I thought it was hyperbole. But over the last 6 or 7 years, not just the last 4, I have learned that people really do mean what they say. And if they are appropriately radicalized, they will act on those words. And it was not surprising to me, though it was infuriating, that the Capitol Police and the Metro Police Department were not prepared for this violence, that instead they turned down assistance and prepared for a peaceful protest. It upset me that they prepared for violent insurrection this summer when protesters went into the streets to fight for the rights of Black Americans and justified that over-preparation by instead instigating that violence themselves. They did that through inescapable curfew, kettling, and whatever the fuck it was that happened at Lafayette Square. But while it upset me, with the exception of Lafayette Square, I was not surprised. Despite what the president-elect says, this is the America that we know. And I think people are starting to see that. The tech companies are sure opening their eyes to it. This week, we've seen a lot of bans that people like me have been asking for a really long time. It started out with Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube removing a video that the president put up to supposedly ask the rioters to stop, but really he was just egging on this insurrection. You well know that his Twitter account was finally taken down. You probably know that he tried to tweet from the POTUS account and those tweets were taken down. You may know that the Trump campaign account was taken down for ban evasion. Michael Flynn and Sidney Powell's accounts were taken down for similar reasons. Rush Limbaugh left the platform. A bunch of Q-related accounts were taken down. I hope that doesn't get this video taken off of YouTube. 8kun admin Ron Watkins' account was taken off of Twitter. And these bans were outside Twitter as well. Discord banned the server The Donald for instigating some of this violence. YouTube banned Steve Bannon's show from the platform. Twitch banned Trump. Shopify, PayPal, and Snapchat banned Trump. YouTube is now handing out strikes for election misinformation. TikTok is limiting the spread of misinformation related to the events at the Capitol. Reddit has banned the r/Donald Trump subreddit after they had already banned r/the Donald before. One of the most interesting ones to me is that DLive, a notoriously open platform, almost too open, has banned streamers who were at the Capitol. Now, I am not going to engage with any of this First Amendment, free speech, this is censorship bullshit. That is disingenuous, and you know it. The argument is so basic, and it is like 9 rounds ago. It is far below the conversation that we're having. If I were to engage with it, I would be stooping to a level and assuming that you were less smart than you actually are. You very well know that a private company is different than a government. You're smarter than that. I know it. You know it. So I'm not going to engage with that. But I do want to talk about one of these bans, and that's the ban of the Parler app from the Google Play Store, and the threat of a similar ban from the Apple App Store. If you don't know, Parler is a social network that centers around free speech, but It's really just a conservative social network. It's kind of a place where people who are kind of sick of Twitter for limiting the things that they can say to go and say kind of the vile shit that they can't say on Twitter. You can imagine the kind of people that brings, the kind of content that brings, and it's honestly not super moderated unless you're saying something that sounds liberal or lefty to them. A lot of the planning for what happened at the Capitol this week and a lot of the threats of violence for between now and January 20th are happening on Parler. They're happening a bunch of places like 4chan, places like 8kun, places like The Donald, but they are also happening on Parler. And Google didn't want any of that. They said to Parler, you can no longer have your app in our store unless you start actually moderating this shit out of your platform. And Apple has said that if Parler doesn't start moderating within 24 hours, they will do the same, at least at the time of this recording. I think this is the right move, and so do a ton of people. But there's a take that I keep waiting for that I haven't seen yet. But I imagine that I'll see it when Apple eventually does remove Parler from their App Store like I expect them to. And I expect that it'll come from one of these center-left techie types. And it goes something like, aren't you happy that Apple has those App Store rules now? Now that they removed the thing that you didn't like? Looks like those App Store policies are a good thing, and there actually shouldn't be a way to get things on the iPhone that Apple doesn't want there. And look, I'm not gonna lie. Once I had like a 30-second brain break to stop thinking about the end of democracy in the United States, that thought entered my brain. But once I thought for more than a few minutes on it, I came to a few conclusions. Here's where I land. Parler has always existed as a website. It's always had a way to distribute its vile content to the people that were looking for that. That didn't go away when Google took the app out of the Play Store, and it won't go away if Apple takes the app out of the App Store. In fact, the way that users are getting this on Android phones right now is by using the PWA. And in fact, some of that has caused some hilariously idiotic moments where people see the word progressive in the term progressive web app and don't want to install it. But my point is that the App Store and the Play Store are not gonna stop Parler. Second, when we've talked about things like this before, we've talked about classes of apps that I believed would be worse off if they were not native apps. However, nothing about Parler is gonna be worse off just because it's a web app. Not that I care about its user experience. In the previous examples I gave in my other videos, we were talking about cloud gaming and other video game technologies. But it turns out that cloud gaming is actually a pretty good experience on the web. I was wrong. Third, Parler's content deserves to be harder to reach. Unlike an email app or a parental controls app or Fortnite, Parler's content is reprehensible, it's violent, and in some cases, it's illegal. And it deserves to be harder to find. It needs to go. Apple deciding that Fortnite can't be on the App Store? That's a financial dispute. These are different issues entirely, and it's totally normal for me to come to different conclusions. Fourth, I still believe that Apple has some App Store policies that don't make sense. Things like their cloud gaming policies, or that you can't use private APIs and distribute in the App Store. Or hell, I actually really disagree with their policies against porn. And Google has some policies too that I don't love, very similar policies to some of the ones that Apple has. And lastly, I do think that you should be able to get either an alternative app store or have a different way to install apps on your iPhone besides the App Store. There are ways to do this on Android. I do think that that would mean that it could be possible that Parler could find a new distribution method. However, any App Store business worth anything would struggle to justify keeping Parler in their listings if Google and Apple had already pulled it. And if it was a small store that was kind of edgy and breaking all of these rules and was a little taboo, that would push Parler further into the shadows, which is exactly what you want. You want the extremists to be hiding. You want them to be afraid of sharing their views in public. That's fine. So yeah, I'm happy that these app stores have these rules. And when the world's not crumbling around us, I'll still find reason to complain about them. But right now, they're working just fine. I'll see y'all next time.